episode of Referee's Discretion. My name is Codd Sinclair, and today we have part 3 of our 4-part Trick or Treat series. This series is 4 weeks of reviews from WCW's Halloween Havoc pay-per-view event. As you already know, for each review, I'll be joined by someone you've seen on PWO WrestleCast. And for today's episode, it is something special. Another show creator of ours from our YouTube channel, the host of Creative Control, and it is Mr. Patrick Lilly. Pat, how are you doing this morning?
Fantastic this morning.
Excellent. This was definitely a marathon show for me to put through. So I hope it wasn't as tough on you as it was on me.
It was kind of refreshing to go back and look. I mean, obviously, you've been watching a lot more of the old 90s WCW with your show going on. But this was really fresh, especially, growing up a WCW guy and being a big NWO mark, this being so fresh after the NWO started. It was really good. It was good to go back and watch.
Good. So we are taking a look at WCW Havoc 1996, taking place from the MGM Grand, which seemed to be the epicenter of all big, grand WCW pay-per-views around the time. If you turn on this event and you don't know who it is sponsored by, you must have your blinders on, because this is sponsored by Slim Jim. You have 4 logos in. You have 4 logos in the ring. The ring posts have the big Slim Jim
look
wrapper
like
on
boxes,
it.
the Slim Jim boxes you pull them out of.
Yeah, huge. Just this is a huge deal, and this was obviously the height of the whole Macho Man snap into a Slim Jim. I can tell you now that as a kid walking through the hallways at school, you were telling everybody to just snap into a Slim Jim, and you did not care.
And Macho Man, of course, being in the main event, which we'll get to later.
Yeah. So just a little bit of backstory about how we kind of got here. We're only a few months removed from Bash at the Beach 1996, which, as we know, was the big the big red and yellow Hulk Hogan heel turn. He was the third man that, as he was with the Outsiders, took on Sting, Lex Luger, and Randy Savage, representing WCW. But this is widely regarded as one of the most shocking moments in professional wrestling history, as well as one of the greatest heel turns in professional wrestling history. How do you remember this as a kid? Just seeing this all go down.
The crazy thing is I was in that age where it was kind of perfect, because I grew up a Hogan fan. Hogan could do no wrong for me, but I was also like old enough, and I had a teenage brother that, like, Hogan becoming the bad guy was the cool thing, and Nash and Hall coming and starting the war was the cool thing. So I was all in. I was all in on NWO. I loved it. And, like, they could do no wrong, even though they were, of course, doing, all the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see the Nick Patrick on the payroll throughout this pay-per-view.
So good just to have somebody in your back pocket, I guess.
Yeah, and conveniently, like, he was booked for all of the NWO matches. Like, what a bad hole in the storylines in retrospect. Like, WCW knew he was on Hogan's payroll, but for some reason he was still being booked all these NWO matches.
It's really great though, because from this pay-per-view, we're only a couple of months out, and I'll review this in January. But it was at that time WCW NWO sold out, and Nick Patrick was the referee in every single match. And I think the role fit perfectly for him, around this time, because there was nobody like him at the time, I think, that was villainized as an official, at least not until November of 1997, when we had Earl Hebner and the Montreal Screwjob. But there was nothing like this going on in professional wrestling at the time.
Yeah, it was great.
So
it was really
yeah. But we open up to the set design. It is peak excellence. This is what modern professional wrestling is missing right now, and it is just the set design. I get that it's I get that it's cost efficient, I guess, to just kind of have the set design for all of your events. But in the late 90s, early 2000s, even with WWF, they would have just these incredible, just elaborate set designs. You see all of the tombstones around, and the fog coming through as wrestlers were coming out. This is peak set design in my opinion, and I'm a mark for that, especially Halloween Havoc.
All of them were very unique, but the funny thing kind of about the Halloween Havoc one here is it almost looks like they stole an old In Your House from WWF and turned it into a Halloween theme.
Yeah, and then just threw some tombstones on the ground and just kept going. It worked though. I loved it, and they even mentioned it as we have Tony Schiavone, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, Bobby the Brain Heenan, all on commentary, and they even mention it, and they are all wearing the WCW Halloween Havoc polo, as sponsored by Slim Jim.
Can I say also, after watching Bound for Glory last night, which we're going to review during Monday's WrestleCast show, God, just hearing Dusty and the Brain, and Schiavone was the worst out of the three, and he's probably one of the better color commentators right now in the business.
Mm-hmm.
It just shows you how bad color commentating is right now in the business, kind of across the board.
Yeah,
like Impact is awful, WWE's shows outside NXT is awful, and even AEW's booth is not great. You forget how a good color commentator can add so much to a match. Dusty and the Brain are fantastic all night, and it's just really kind of a lost art right now.
Yeah, they really popped for this first match, though. It is for the WCW Cruiserweight Championship, as you have Dean Malenko taking on Mysterio Jr. I think both of their themes in the mid-90s were just two underrated wrestling themes. I mean, compared to the generic stuff we have today, just two great themes here. Malenko coming out with Ray's mask in his hand. There is a spot in about the first quarter or where you have Rey Mysterio reclaim the mask that was stolen, and in the middle of the ring he does like some kind of weird mask switch. Yep. And doesn't show his face. I don't know why. I just found that just to be amazing. But didn't see his mask, which was great. But this match overall was just incredible to watch. And it's crazy to think that Rey Mysterio, even in a limited capacity in 2020, is still going and can still pull off a lot of these moves that he was doing in 1996. It also goes to show everyone that Dean Malenko is very underrated. But I think that when I think when WCW got bought out, there's so many things. It's just the mold of his character I thought would have fit with WWF, and it just didn't. But this match overall was absolutely great to watch. The Cruiserweight division in mid to late 90s WCW was the best thing on television. And it was mainly because of these two guys. We had a lot of other guys. We'll get to another Cruiserweight match later in the show. But the finish is, Mysterio goes to the top rope. Dean Malenko follows up. Ray goes for his Hurricane Rana. Malenko throws him off. Ray jumps back up, but Dean Malenko catches him and hits a gut wrench power bomb from the top to get the win. What are your thoughts on this one?
So off the bat, this was probably, as far as work rate goes, the match of the night. They opened really strong. You got to forget how good Rey Mysterio was, because unfortunately with the WWE, he really, clearly bulked up to a point where what was so great about him, was lost. He had such, he still has agility and he's still around well, but he really was incredible early in his career. And I liked also that they went with a non-traditional finish. Malenko getting the win, it's believable that, he could get a 3 count off a gut wrench power bomb off the middle rope. And, that's cool, because it seems like every match nowadays, like, you have to hit your finisher or it has to be a roll-up.
Mm-hmm.
And it is kind of, it shows you, like, oh yeah, you can have matches where, like, you can have a big impact move, get a 3 count, and it doesn't have to be like a steal or my finisher. So
yeah, 100% agree, and I think that's the trend that we've seen just going through this series this month, is that the less conventional finishes to matches have just enhanced whatever was going on the past 10, 15, 20 minutes. And in a way, it just enhances even the storyline overall, to where even just to pull an example from having 92, the first match, it was a 6-man match. You had a team of 3, and it was your younger guys, and then the other team, you just had these 3 grizzly vets, and fast-paced action back and forth, and then they get an O'Connor roll to get the win. You don't see that nowadays, but it was believable, because now you're looking at it as, even though we're veterans, we can get caught like this. Anybody can get caught, but now, like you said, it's got to hit the finish, got to make sure the match is finished. But I gave this a 2 count. It's equivalent to a 4-star match. It was hard hitting. It was fast paced. It didn't feel like 20 minutes, but it did feel like it was kind of drawn out a little bit. But overall, I love this match. Did you grade this match at all?
I went with a 2.5 count.
Okay.
False finish, if you will. I really enjoyed the match. And that was, like I said, work rate was the best match of the night. They did a really good job of letting Malenko control early on and slow it to his pace until Ray really got going towards the end there. So it really showcased what both of them were very good at. I just thought it was a really good match overall.
Oh yeah. So immediately cut to that. We have Lee Marshall backstage saying that Ric Flair is unable to face the Giant. But one man has stepped up to the challenge, and it's Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Says pretty much that the NWO hasn't impressed him. Goes on to say that even though the Giant has chokeslammed almost everyone, that he won't chokeslam me. Out of the shadows comes Ric Flair. He's there to support. We'll get to that match a little later, but then cut to our next match. It is Diamond Dallas Page versus Eddie Guerrero. This feud essentially started over the Battle Bowl Championship ring, which Diamond Dallas Page originally won, but then it was shown that he was actually eliminated from the match by the Barbarian. So he did not get the championship match, but he still stole the ring. So now it's a big whodunit as far as who has the ring now, because at first Eddie stole it and now nobody can find it. So this match really didn't do a whole lot for me.
It
It
was
was almost
really disappointing when you
yeah.
consider that, like, you hear Eddie Guerrero and DDP, you're like, okay, this is going to be a match of the night contender. They're really underwhelmed.
Yeah, I kind of had to take a step back because this wasn't late '90s Diamond Dallas Page yet. We were still mid '90s where he was still transitioning out of this mouthpiece role that he was in to slide into this in ring performer. I think it's a tale of two matches. When you have Diamond Dallas Page controlling the page, just the match overall just takes a huge hit. But then I think when you have Eddie Guerrero leading the pace a little bit, I think that DDP matches that and gets there to the best he can. But even then, it's still a lot better than what we got. But the finish is that we get Eddie Guerrero to the top rope, a huge crossbody onto the outside. Back in the ring, DDP catches him. He hits a neutralizer, a sit-out power bomb, and then a kind of sloppy, still kind of green diamond cutter to finish off Eddie Guerrero. I gave it a 1 count. It's equivalent to like a 2 count or a 2-star match. It was fine. I just don't think the styles really meshed that well. And even if they didn't, I feel like it could have been booked to a point where Guerrero could have taken the lead calling spots and it wouldn't have looked as clunky as it did. What did you think?
Yeah, pretty spot on again. Go 1 count. I did not. It's exactly what you said. You expect more when you hear DDP Eddie Guerrero. You're just expecting more from that match. And looking at the card before going back and watching, that's probably the biggest disappointment of the evening for me.
Yeah. So then we cut to Mike backstage with the Macho Man Randy Savage, announcing the winner of a sweepstakes they had for the Randy Savage, Slim Jim Monster Truck, which I hope it's what we see at the end of this show because that thing was immaculate. But this whole segment is just great overall. Savage is great. Tenay is just slightly awkward. And the best part was as far as the sweepstakes goes, there was like a cylindrical tube, and it was designed to be like a Slim Jim wrapper, and the top was supposed to just pop off, and you have Savage there just trying to like bear hug this thing to just rip it off, and he's struggling. And this is peak just, Tenay just trying to stretch a little bit of time. But it's great. And then he asked the woman who wins the truck for a ride, which just cherry on top of the cake as just, Randy Savage in just that tone of voice, just, asking some random woman for a ride. It's just chef's kiss there. But then transition, Jericho's at the computer area, looking slightly confused. Then back to Mike Tenay, who is now with the new WCW Cruiserweight Champion, Dean Malenko, and he asks who's next. He says it does not matter. The title is staying with him, and he welcomes all comers. That's one thing I noticed about the show, though, is that the transitions, they weren't really put well together. It was just, hey, here's a match, here's a transition, because this is what we feel like we need now after this match. Or even just now, it went from one cutaway to another one, and then to another one, and then we're getting ready to go to another one.
Yeah, there was a lot of interviewing between matches. I don't know if that is to give you kind of like a more of a sports feel. I don't know if that's what they were going for. I don't know. It seemed like you said, not great. It didn't keep things flowing well.
Yeah. So we get so up in the crowd they have this NWO corner over part of the fan area. And before every NWO match, you get Ted DiBiase coming out, and he's always with Virgil, who doesn't do anything this match except for stand there and walk whoever's competing through the crowd, and then that's it. And then that's all he does throughout the entire show.
He's the valet.
Yeah, absolutely right. But we do get Ted DiBiase on the mic talking with the Giant, who essentially shames Jeff Jarrett for not joining the NWO. The Giant gets on pretty briefly, says he'll chokeslam Jarrett in the middle of the ring. Transition to that match: the Giant versus Jeff Jarrett, who is being accompanied by Ric Flair.
This is that weird time where they had like all these members of the Horsemen, right? Like,
yeah,
Jarrett was in, but also like Mongo and Benoit. Were they compete? Were they still at the time competing for a spot? Like, I know at one point they were competing for a spot, and then they just made them both Horsemen.
Yeah, for a very brief period, that's what was going on, and then we'll see in the tag team match later that they actually paid Mongo to be in the Horsemen, kind of as the muscle, I guess. But this match is it's there. It's your typical David versus Goliath match. Jarrett doesn't come out of this looking incredibly smart. You have segments in this match where he's just basic moves, hoping to I guess wear down the Giant. But it was fine for what it was. The Giant looks strong, looking like he can only be defeated by some form of chicanery. Jarrett comes out of this looking like a schmuck a little bit because he's not smart in the ring. He's got to get help from Flair to finish. And then at the end of the day, we get all the Horsemen in the ring, and it was kind of weird.
That whole bit, it seemed like the whole match was designed to have a like WCW standing tall moment. And like, this is where Shivani has gotten a lot better, and maybe it's just, I don't know, who knows, maybe it was just the way they wanted them to shoot like this invasion angle. But he's like, how tough are you now, Giant? You're not gonna fight now when the numbers are against you. You're not gonna fight anybody. And it's like, well, there's 5 guys standing in the ring and 2 of them have chairs. He's not, that's smart. Who's doing that? Nobody.
Essentially. So the finish here is that the Giant goes to chokeslam Jeff Jarrett outside of the ring, and Nick Patrick standing right there on the apron. Flair, the dirtiest player in the game, comes, low blows the Giant. The Giant wins by disqualification. I did give this a 1 count. I thought it was fine for what it was. But this stint in WCW for Jeff Jarrett only lasted until the following October, where he would return to the WWF. He was there for 2 years and then back to WCW, where he was Mr. Slapnuts. What did you grade this?
I graded this a no contest.
Oh, okay.
They did not care for it. The whole purpose of this evening was kind of to give show the NWO taking firm control. And this, it still makes the Giant look strong because he just ate the chair shot, and it was like, okay. But the Horsemen kind of stand tall for a moment. So I don't know. I didn't care for it. It seemed almost like an unnecessary match.
So cutting back to the NWO corner up in the stands, DiBiase back on the mic, this time speaking on behalf of Six, better known as the 1-2-3 Kid or X-Pac. He says that Jarrett, and they say this about 7 times within this 2-minute promo here. They both say that Jericho is a fine young but he's just in the right place at the wrong time, leading to the match between Six and Chris Jericho. Gosh, I really got my feels as soon as Jericho's Lionheart theme came on. It's just one of those. It's another one of those themes as far as the cruiserweight division in WCW goes. I mean, I can't remember a bad WCW cruiserweight theme that was bad.
It's funny because I kind of marked for Dean Malenko's.
Oh, there's not a whole lot there that anybody could blame you for. But this match was decent. Essentially, this match is here to build to next month's pay-per-view, where we will get Chris Jericho versus Nick Patrick, where Jericho would have one arm tied behind his back.
Leave it to Jericho.
So
a gimmick match, even back in '96.
Hey. So towards the end of this match here, we get a line salt from Jericho, follows up with a Sonata-esque O'Connor roll into a bridge. It's right about this time that we notice that Nick Patrick is slow counting for Jericho. And it's it's all about the cell jump. Jericho hits a springboard crossbody for definitely a 3 count. But that neck just really bothering Nick Patrick. So
didn't get there fast enough.
Yeah. So then as he's getting in his face, Six takes advantage, hits a spinning heel kick out of nowhere for the win. And then post match, it further fuels the fire as Jericho getting in the face of Nick Patrick. I thought as the match overall, though, I thought it was I gave it a 1.5 count, comparable to about a 3-star match. DB said it before the match that Jericho was an exceptional athlete. I wanted more, though. I think that what we were saying about the last match, where this was supposed to be kind of the NWO's coming out party, and this is supposed to be about building them up. This was definitely that, because Six dominated the match for the most part, and it just furthers the storyline that the NWO would have Nick Patrick on the payroll. But I gave it a 1.5 count. I thought it was an average match. Both guys look good, even with the chicanery finish. What did you have?
I gave it a solid 2. Going back and watching this made me realize that maybe I undervalue a little bit of Six or X-Pac or Waltman, whatever you want to call him. I kind of undervalued that he was a much better worker than I really remember, just because you kind of remember all the other things about him. But yeah, I mean, they put on a really, really quality match, and not surprising that we're talking about that with Jericho, being in the argument for GOAT status.
For sure. So again, an awkward transition now. Mike Tenay backstage, total package, Lex Luger. And we're going to get the Arn Anderson versus Lex Luger match. Essentially, this match came up at the previous month's War Games, where he was the one that ate the submission in that match. Essentially, Arn calling him throughout this mini feud just not tough. So Luger comes out and says, "Oh, I'm going to put the loss at War Games on me," and then turns around and says that he will not only beat Arn Anderson, but he'll make him suffer in the torture rack. I have mixed emotions about this match, because I expect more from Arn Anderson, but he's got to carry the dead weight that is 270 pounds of Lex Luger.
Lex Luger, just as bad as you remember him.
Yeah, it's rough.
Hard to understand. I mean, I get it look-wise, but But no, man, he just hard to understand why he got so many chances.
Yeah. So the end of this match, we have both men on the outside. Arn goes for a pile driver. Lex reverses and catapults him into the ring post. Follows up with a suplex. Lex Luger grabs a steel chair, cracks it over Arn's back 3 times, rolls him back into the ring, gets him to submit to the torture rack. He does not let go at the bell, though. This is the new aggressive side of Lex Luger. But after a few moments, he does let go. The finish stands in a strange. It's very strange what happens next. We get Flair and Jarrett down to the ring, and they have a stretcher come down for Arn Anderson because of his back injury.
Yeah, this is like the beginning of the end for in-ring Arn.
Yeah, it was tough to watch because you weren't sure if it was the end of the road because of his age or if it was storyline. This is also the time in professional wrestling where we were starting to blur that line a little more between fiction and reality. But I gave it a one count. It was very one note, but a lot of it was because of Lex Luger. He's in the Mongo world of that he botches uncontrollably. Yeah. But it was kind of a glorified squash. Arn had a hot start, but fizzled out at the end. What did you give this one?
With you on the 1 count. It serves the purpose to tell the story, but Arn was in the twilight of his career, and Lex is just bad, so it didn't have a ton of potential.
Yeah, but it's very interesting though on commentary. As we transition into the next match, they say on commentary that that Arn is on his way to the hospital, and that Flair and Jarrett are on the way with him. It's very important as we get to this next match. Lee Marshall now backstage with Colonel Robert Parker, Sister Sherry, and Harlem Heat. That is Booker T and Stevie Ray. Essentially, they all get their pieces in here during this little backstage promo. But the overall message at the NWO stuck their nose in their business, and they are going to take it to them later tonight. We do get a tag team match in between that, though. So we have the Faces of Fear, which are Meng and the Barbarian, being accompanied to the ring by Jimmy Hart, taking on 2 parts of the 4 Horsemen, Steve Mongo McMichael and Chris Benoit, and they are being accompanied to the ring by Deborah and Woman, also known as Nancy Benoit. I came into this match very kind of having the bar a little lower. Honestly, what I've seen of the Barbarian on previous referees' discretions, I've not been impressed. But I think that with this match, you have Meng, who is a capable worker in the ring, Chris Benoit, who is undoubtedly one of the best technical wrestlers to ever step in the squared circle. And you can kind of let them carry it a little bit. But even with the advanced spots that he got in this, he looked good. There was one spot he has Benoit up on the top rope, and he climbs up to get him, and it's an overhead suplex, but he tosses him out of the ring. I thought he was gonna bounce and do the whole Ric Flair over the turnbuckle and onto the apron. But no, I thought that they looked strong. Mongo and Chris Benoit looked good. Ultimately, though, Mongo ends up ends up cracking Meng in the head with the Halliburton briefcase.
Yes.
Yes. Benoit goes to the top, hits the diving headbutt, and gets the win. Before we get into the post-match shenanigans that took place, what did you think of the match?
It was what it was. Benoit was stellar as usual, and Mongo was Mongo. The Faces of Fear were the Faces of Fear, or the Wild Savages, or whatever they were being called at this point in their career. The Wild Tongans.
Yeah. It was really great to see that Chris Benoit can kind of do everything you need him to in the ring, and I think ultimately what led to him, I guess ultimately led to WCW putting the world title on him before he jumped ship. But he looks like an absolute star here, obviously, and
yeah, I mean, it was evident always. I mean, from an early time that he was just meant for stardom, and the weird thing I felt about this was it seemed like, well, not like this pay-per-view in particular. The weird thing I thought about this whole storyline with him, though, was it always felt like Mongo was the one that they seemed to want to try and get over more.
Oh yeah, and I think that it's very evident in his matches early on in his professional wrestling career that he had no blue idea what the heck he was doing. He was greener than a green bean.
He was awful.
And yeah, and I think it's very. I think it's more. I think you can see it more clear in matches where he's with, say, like a Meng or even like a Chris Benoit in this match, where he's in the ring with a more experienced guy, where he's trying to call spots in the ring, and he's just not capable of doing that yet.
Yeah, he's bad. He never,
but as far as
got good, let's be honest.
Yeah, true. But then as far as the post-match shenanigans, a Barbarian grabs the briefcase and hits Mongo with it, and then you get the Faces of Fear taking care of Mongo and Benoit in the ring, and then something we haven't mentioned yet: the Dungeon of Doom has been sitting in the crowd.
Yeah,
they very briefly panned to them during the Arn Anderson match. Obviously setting the seeds up for this, which I thought was fantastic. Eventually, you have, the Dungeon of Doom, and essentially they just go and, kidnap woman, essentially. And for a very brief moment, Benoit's fighting everybody off, and you think he's standing tall, but then, the numbers game ends up being a little bit too much here.
How weird did it have to be going through all of that when you consider like watching Dark Side of the Ring and knowing everything that went on between, woman Kevin Sullivan and her, her relationship with him, and then like she's being abducted by him as a storyline, and like, oh my gosh, what?
Yeah, and it was chilling. When towards the end of this whole segment, when when he had Kevin Sullivan turn and then he says to woman, "Let me show you why I'm still the man."
Yeah.
And like you said, having watched Dark Side and then now watching this, it's just very chilling to think that and this is 96, so about a decade later, was when the wrestling world would be shocked or tragedy.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. Overall, though, I gave this a 1.5 count. It was very hard hitting. It was a clean match, all except for Mongo. I think he slipped like twice. All in all, everybody got their spots in. Everyone ended up looking all right. I get the finish, as far as Halliburton and all that, but I wasn't for it. What did you give the match?
Give it a 1 count.
Okay.
I mean, he's just, I don't know. Again, this was like a time filler.
Yeah, because it was all setting up going, from the next match. Well, from this match to the next match, and it's weird again because I know we've already mentioned, just how the show really wasn't put together that well.
Yeah.
As far as transitions.
Yeah.
So we had the backstage stuff, where we had Harlem Heat, and then this match, and then we jump right to Ted DiBiase again, up in the corner where the NWO banner is. He says we got 2 down and 2 to go. Also says Harlem Heat can't do anything about what's going to happen because they are next on the hit list. So directly into that match, we have the Outsiders, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, taking on Harlem Heat. As we've already talked about, Booker T and Stevie Ray. They are with Sister Sherry, Colonel Robert Parker, and they are the current WCW Tag Team Championships. Titles are on the line. I honestly really enjoyed this match until the last couple of moments. Everybody got their spots in.
They hit the Harlem Hangover. God, I love the Harlem Hangover.
It's one of the best tag team maneuvers. It's right up there. I think with the heart attack, and then the Doomsday Device. It's right up there with all of them. I think that with the goal, as you stated earlier, was to get the NWO over, and I think kind of the sub goal here was to not diminish anything or any star power that WCW already had. And I think that this match did a really good job with that. Especially because Harlem Heat still comes out looking strong in this match.
Yeah, they got screwed.
Yeah. Like you said, they hit the
good old Colonel.
Yeah, they hit the Harlem Hangover. So the refs getting Booker T out of the ring. So I don't understand this either, and this is why I bumped it down a grade from what I initially had this. Colonel Parker gets in the ring. All you have to do is just stay outside, and it's a 3. It's a win. You're going to retain the titles. But then you have Kevin Nash, who steals his cane. He hits Stevie Ray in the back twice with it, and he literally just lays Scott Hall over top of him to get the win.
Did you lay him over, or you just slowly like?
Oh yeah, it's like
I think they're just laying there.
Yeah,
maybe 20 or 30.
You're right. And then he just rolls himself over. It almost reminds you of WrestleMania 19 when you had Triple H and Booker T, and he hits that pedigree, and it literally takes almost 30 seconds for Triple H to make the pin, and then eventually gets the win. Which in wrestling logic, though, if it takes that long to make the pin, then you kick out. But I guess as the pedigree is just one of the most devastating moves in wrestling history.
Unless Sue Young does it.
Colonel Robert Parker's cane.
Unless Sue Young does it, because Sue Young did a pedigree and didn't even keep Deonna Purrazzo down.
What did you think of the match, though?
I gave it 2 count, mostly I think more for my nostalgia of both teams. Obviously, I've mentioned I'm a big NWO mark, but I loved Harlem Heat. I was devastated when they broke Harlem Heat up, even though Stevie Ray joined NWO, and man, I forget exactly how the storyline went, but like they took Booker T's gear and like threw it out or something, and he was wrestling in like these little black Speedo number because it's all he can find. He's like basically wrestling in his underwear. And
Yeah, it ended up being that they had a match. Eventually, it was. I know there was Stevie Ray involved, and I can't forget the other guy. But then eventually, you would have Ahmed Johnson, who was
The Pearl River
and he would,
Powerhouse.
yeah. And at that point in his career, he was severely overweight. Um, it was a match to get the T part of their name, and of course Ahmed Johnson would win. His name would be Sweet T in WCW, but that wouldn't last long. But it's funny because you had Booker T, who would go on for a short period of time to be known as GI Bro. With it's very hard to believe that he recovered from the GI Bro gimmick. Um,
Misfits in Action, man. That is like one
yeah,
of the most awesomely bad factions in the history of wrestling.
yeah,
Like you loved them, but their gimmicks were so god awful.
yeah. Especially during the time period that was
Chavo
WCW
was
year
riding like a
2000.
wooden horse out.
Hey, he was
What is
doing
that?
that in
What is
1996.
that?
All right.
Panchito?
Something like that. Actually, no. It was Pepe.
I was gonna say I might be making Panchito up because I was watching that the
No,
Ducktales Three Caballeros with my nephew recently.
he rode that horse out for his match against Stevie Ray at Road Wild '96. That's the only reason why I remember
Oh
that.
my god! So that was the thing. That
Yeah,
was the thing pre joining what's it called? Misfits in Action.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But I gave it a 1.5 count. I was gonna give it a 2. I thought everybody looked good, and then the finish really rubbed me the wrong way. So I gave it a 1.5 count. But that's not why we're here. We're here for the main event of the evening. But before we get to that, we have Hollywood Hulk Hogan now on the mic in the NWO corner, taking the place of Ted DiBiase on the mic. He starts to plug Three Ninjas High Noon at Mega Mountain.
I don't remember
um,
that Three Ninjas movie.
oh, it's bad. Um, I mean, in general, I mean, the Three Ninjas movies were made for kids. The first two were great, and then there was this one, and it was his name in the movie was Dave Dragon.
Was he the
I
bad
do
guy?
remember that because no, he was a good guy, and his theme song was like "Go Dave Dragon, Go Dave Dragon,"
Like was it an
and
actual theme or like that's what
yeah,
played when
yeah,
he came out?
no, like
Movie star.
he was like a television superhero kind of
Oh,
thing.
okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, so
That's
God
good.
damn, forget about that.
I,
But he goes on to plug in that he still has the hairstyle that he had in the movie on, which is very comical because it's like a spiky flat top.
they got a lot of mileage out of that, if I remember correctly. Like
A little bit, yeah.
there was a lot there was a good measure of time where he was continuing to wear that and having it like ripped off of him.
Yeah, it would kind of be the joke of the match whenever he was competing. But he essentially goes on to say that since he's done beating up Hollywood, he is now back to take care of Macho Man Randy Savage. So we get the whole shebang. We get Michael Buffer doing all the introductions. He's behind on like everything because you have Hogan in the ring. His music, the NWO music's already been playing, and then like they do a double take. They play Savage's theme for like 5 seconds, then they cut it, and then they start playing it again, And as they play it the second time, you get Michael Buffer starting the introductions for Hulk Hogan. And it's so weird.
Yeah, I don't know. It was really bad. But that was something I kind of feel like whether or not they were doing something special, like WCW had a lot of these problems over the course of several years. Like production
Yeah.
always, I don't really know if they were using like similar production crews. Like we talked about AEW on the WrestleCast before COVID. Like they're just picking up like local stagehands outside of their core group. You know, like is that what WCW did? You know, compared to Raw having a full time army of staff members.
Yeah, but he was a minute behind. But once Savage comes out from the back, he hits a huge, massive pop. He walks up to the side. He starts to motion something over. It's the monster truck that the girl won that we talked about earlier in the show. This thing is absolutely impressive. It is a monster truck, and it has this giant yellow cowboy hat on it. And I wish I would have been able to win this thing in '96 when I was 6 years old. I would have lost my collective mind if I would have won this dang thing. So we get Savage into the ring, and we have Hogan, and he's with DiBiase and the Giant, and he says, you know, you got to get those goons out of here. So the referee kicks him out, but they don't really leave. They just kind of maul around and gosh. And then the match starts, and I swear it was 5 minutes, and there was only like one like small piece of contact. I think that it was a headlock from Hogan, and it's a lot of stalling, a lot of powdering, a lot of chasing. But then once the action gets going, you have Savage, who steals Hogan's glasses. He's had his sunglasses on the entire match to this point. So we're probably about a third, probably between a third and a half of the way through the match. And Hulk Hogan's still wearing his glasses, which means this is a phone job. We're just calling this one in. But you have Savage, who steals the glass, and he puts them on. So Savage grabs Hogan's hair to go and punch him. So he punches him, and in his hand is the wig from Hulk Hogan's head, and Savage puts it on his own head. And
oh my God, Savage!
And he kind of looked like Guy Fieri for a second. And it's like, I know we're phoning this in, you know, but this is the main event of like what you would consider probably one of the big 4 pay-per-views, and this is what we're getting. Like, it's absolutely crazy to think that this is that this is the main event of a Halloween Havoc.
It seems like the whole point of this match was for the payoff after the match.
Yeah.
Which is sad because you hear Macho and Hulk and you expect like superpowers type effort, you know, some sort of, you know, Goliath and, you know.
Well, we do eventually, speaking of mega powers, we do get Miss Elizabeth, who makes her way to the ring. Hogan uses her as a human shield a couple of times. In his typical heel ways. They do this spot about 3 times. Where we have Hogan, and he has Miss Elizabeth in front of him as a shield, and then throws her at Savage, and then starts running again, gets into the ring, and then it's just like it just repeats a couple times. And like, if we didn't want to have an 18-minute match, we didn't have to.
And we did, though.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, but then eventually Hogan with the big boot goes for the leg drop, and then you have Elizabeth who gets in the way. All right, this is when the chicanery starts. Hogan would eventually go for the leg drop. He would miss. We get a ref bump. This is the best part. We get a ref bump. So we need to replace a referee. We got to have somebody come out and finish this match. It's not going to be me. It's going to be Nick Patrick.
Of course.
With neck brace and all. Obviously, him and a couple of referees are out trying to, tending to the official that took the ref bump. So as all this is going on, Savage hits a scoop slam, goes up, hits the elbow drop, and it's got to be a 3 count because Hogan looks like he's dead. So you have Nick Patrick, he goes 1, 2, and then his old neck injury. It's just a bad neck injury. But he does stop short of 3. Savage goes back up to the top, but then DiBiase pulls him down. The Giant choke slams Savage onto the floor outside, rolls him in, pulls Hogan on top of him for the win. NWO go 4-0 for the night.
Standing tall.
Yeah. What did you grade this one?
I gave it. I was between a half count and a 1 count. And again, nostalgia does a lot for me. I love the old guard, but this was a tough match to watch. Not a lot of continuity, and it's everything you would expect in a match to keep Hogan over as he got older. Let him eat some fists, and then he'll powerbomb you, and it'll be all over.
Yeah, and this is really sad too, because I gave this a 0. I can't.
0.
It was an absolute mess, no matter how you look at it. I think that the story of Hogan coming back, forming the New World Order, and then you have Savage who's who is on a winning streak, and they're building him up to be this grand opponent. He is Slim Jimmed out. He's got the Slim Jim truck. Everything is perfect for him to win, and they just don't give it to him. And I thought it was terribly booked. I thought that the shenanigans, as far as a ratio, shenanigans to the actual in-ring action, you probably had about 80-20 split.
Yeah, it was bad there.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that happens post-fight, is that a part of your count?
No.
Or is it a separate entity altogether?
This is I don't grade the pre and post.
Okay.
Just grading the actual match as it is.
Okay.
However, I do give my critique when it is necessary for moments like this. So post match, we'll get right to it. Giant kind of bumbles a big bucket of ice water down to the ring. He spills it getting into the ring, but dumps on Hogan. Hogan's all of a sudden revitalized. He says he's the real king of Hollywood, and then you hear the bagpipes. And it's a slow build. I got chills immediately. But you hear the bagpipes, the crowd's kind of increasing in volume. And then out from the back, it's Rowdy Roddy Piper. The crowd loses their collective mind. This is his WCW debut. Hogan's acting is wonderful here. It's just this. Just these over-the-top facial expressions. He hides behind the Giant as Piper gets into the ring. I didn't think much of the promo, honestly. But just the fact that, Hogan just had this god awful match, and then now we have Roddy Piper, who of course is not in his heyday anymore.
Well, I mean, neither was
But
Hogan or
I
Mach
think,
at this point. I mean,
yeah,
you were selling name, and you were selling a brand versus a quality wrestling match.
Yeah. How did you react to this?
Okay, so I'm biased because I hate Roddy Piper. I can't stand Roddy Piper. I judge why people love him. He's never been a guy that I cared for. I don't know why. It never stuck with me. He's just always been an obnoxious character, and being a Hogan mark, just the over the top looks of fear that Hogan gave were ridiculous. And this was the thing, and this is why the NWO only worked for so long. Was Hogan didn't understand the change in the business. He was doing the same thing that heels did to him for 20 years. And that's what screwed him is like, if I'm Hulk Hogan, I am not afraid of Roddy Piper. You sniveling little wuss. You do not.
Yeah.
My python are gonna squeeze the life out of you. And I don't know. I don't know. It was a good surprise. It worked into a good booking into Starrcade. I understand it. I can't say anything positive about Roddy Piper. That's where I'm at. I don't like Roddy at all. Never been a fan.
So the feud, it would be almost a full year. They would have the cage match at next year's Halloween Havoc.
Hogan lost the belt to him, I think.
So I don't know if he had the belt on him at the time, but in the two matches that they had against each other, and it was a singles match, Roddy won both, which is unheard of. But so Halloween Havoc in '97, the feud was over. Roddy would win the U.S. Heavyweight Championship 3 times while during his remaining years in WCW, and he was released in July of 2000. But that is how the show ends. Overall, what did you grade the show here, Pat?
I would give it a 1.5 count overall. The nostalgia, seeing characters and people that you haven't seen in a long time brings you a lot of joy. But the work rate was not very good. The booking, I understand that you want to get everybody over in the NWO and you're getting the NWO over, but I don't know, do it in a different way. Like every match had to be hook or crook. And they weren't, that wasn't their bit. They were going to do everything to win the matches, but what got people interested in them wasn't these funny little skits. It was powerbombing Bischoff off the stage. It was, just beating Rey Mysterio, using him like a lawn dart, So I never really got the booking because it was almost like they couldn't win and look strong. They always had to steal wins. And it's just kind of that old wrestling gimmick on bad guys. They have the bad guy win. They can't just be a strong heel and win matches. But this was mid-90s WCW. You had some really, really good stuff going on, like the cruiserweights. We talked about Dean Malenko and Ray had an incredible match. And again, that was everything that was right about WCW. And then you could watch and continue to watch and you understand what was everything wrong with WCW at the time as well.
Oh, for sure. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars, which is equivalent to a 1 or 1.5 count. Ric Flair award for this show goes to Dean Malenko versus Rey Mysterio and the Cruiserweight Championship match. The Russo award obviously goes to Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage. Everything you said was on point. Overall, just a very average show. I thought the tag matches kind of went above expectation. Everything else was average. But like you said, the Cruiserweight division on top of the wrestling world at this point is the whole division is the star here.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely incredible.
That really was. It was incredible because they did have 7 or 8 guys that at any time could be the Cruiserweight champ, and it was believable. I mean, that belt hot potatoed between Malenko, Rey Mysterio, Jericho, LaPark, Ultimo Dragon. Like, there were so many dudes. Juventud Guerrera. And you could go on if you wanted to because there was, Super Callow. But yeah, just a lot of really great wrestlers. And you wish that they would have supported that more maybe the first time around.
Yeah. But those are our thoughts on WCW and Halloween Havoc 96. What did you think of the event? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to watch WrestleCast live every Monday and Thursday on Facebook and YouTube, and listen on the go on Apple Podcast. Be on the lookout for the Dean of Old School, Dwight Parker's debut show of Do Your Darn Homework. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and follow to Podcast World Order. If you like what you're doing and you would like to support us, you can find us on Ko-fi at the link in the description box. Patrick, where can they find you on social media?
Twitter at Mr. Lilly, MisterLilly, and Instagram Patrick Lilly, Lilly 7150. Those are my handles.
Both of those will be in the description box as well. Also, head over to our YouTube page and check out his show, Creative Control. We will be having a second episode here in the next few weeks, so keep your ears and eyes open for that. For next week's episode, we will have the final part of Referee's Discretion Trick or Treat series with a review of WCW Halloween Havoc 1999. If you haven't figured it out already, the final special guest enforcer for this episode will be the host of PWO WrestleCast on Mondays and Thursdays. That is Mr. Matthew Lilly. So please tune in to WrestleCast and you will be reminded of such. From everyone here at Podcast World Order, thank you for watching. And remember, at the end of the day, it's referee's discretion. I'm Codd Sinclair, and we'll see you next time.